gentlemen, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for this devotional. Today we're in Daniel chapter 1 still, verses 8 through 9. It reads, But Daniel resolved. I'm going to come back to those three words. That he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs, that's that man named Aspenaz, to allow him to not defile himself, and God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. So this devotional today is going to be the first in a series of three devotional that are going to actually carry us through the narrative in Daniel chapter 1. And I'm going to build it all around the first three words in this text today, but Daniel resolved. I love those words, resolute, obviously, right? He resolved himself because in this story, we're going to learn how resolute men do three things: how he makes choices, how he approaches challenges, and number three, how his choices affect others. So here's part one, how a resolute man makes choices. So we got to remember our context, right? It's going to help us out here to kind of understand the situation. Daniel is about 900 miles from his home in Judah. He's taken into captivity, but he's kind of given the royal treatment. I mean, this is kind of a lavish captivity experience. I mean, he's given the very best living situation inside the palace. He's trained by the very best teachers, and he's given the very best food, or so it would seem. You see, the first challenge that Daniel encounters is really just what's on the menu. While the food and drink is fit for the king, Daniel has a twofold issue with the meal plan. First, great portions of the meat served in the Babylonian Palace were things like pork and venison, which were unclean animals, according to his Mosaic Law. Second, all the food and drink were first offered sacrificially to Babylonian gods. Thus, eating that food was understood as an indirect worship of those gods. So Daniel is actually faced with a real conundrum here, and he has a choice, right? A choice. He can choose to cower in captivity, or he can decide to challenge courageously. Well, we know what Daniel did. He chooses the latter. He chooses to challenge in this moment. You know, I think we men face predicaments like this all the time. We find ourselves in situations that by nature lead us to compromise maybe our biblical beliefs or our values or our convictions. It could be that we find ourselves maybe like in a situation where we're pressured by the agenda of a leader who opposes our faith, or we could be alone in a compromising position where we're free to act contrary to our beliefs, or maybe we feel relational pressure to not act because it might put someone else in a compromising situation. And I think actually Daniel felt all three of these things here. He felt the pressure of an influential leader, the king. He felt the freedom of compromise in his situation because he was a long way from home, and he felt the pressure to not act, that he might put his friends and other captives at risk as well. But Daniel still does this. He still makes a resolute choice. And I believe he made this choice because he decided in his mind that it was better to endure the justice of God than the justice of anyone or anything else. So here's what I want to encourage you to do today. I want you to be more resolute in every decision you make. Start by making small, resolute choices in your day, and when you thus get to these big ones like Daniel does here, they're a little bit easier to make, right? Because then maybe along the way you'll build enough courage to understand what it really means to have true, resolute courage. The kind that Daniel had right here. Well, I love you guys. Thanks for joining me today. See you right back here tomorrow for part 2 of this devotional series.